I know most of you kind of like your work, may like the people you work with, but I'm absolutely certain at least 8 out of 10 or 4 out of 5 would rather be doing something else. So the question is, and as you know, this is the whole thing with the Rich Dad radio show and the Rich Dad company and all this, is why are you working for money? You know, how much of a spell does money have over your life? If you've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Lesson 1, Chapter 1, the rich don't work for money. And a lot of people don't really get that because they've been programmed to get up, go to work, collect that paycheck, go home, and then do it again the next day. And the question is, why are you doing that? Any comments, Kim?
Well, we're going to have a great program today. If you get up Monday morning, I heard this funny statistic that Monday morning there's more deaths that happen Monday morning than any other day of the week because people are going, I don't want to go to work. I don't want to do that. So we're going to dig into why people work at jobs they don't like and how can you get past that and do work that you really do enjoy doing.
So let me tell you a quick story. I was in Baltimore, Maryland yesterday, and I walked into this store, kind of a high-end men's store, and they had the appropriate sales clerk, this old guy, kind of stuffy and all this, sitting there, and he is running the little shop. And so I'm walking in there, and all these young kids come running in. They're all with this network marketing company, and their eyes are bright, and they're happy, and they're asking me questions, because they're going for their dreams.
And they all read your book years ago.
Yeah, and they're all like these kids, and now the thing is, their hair is pink. They have piercings. They have strange shoes on, and they're kids, young kids, and they have a thing called the RAT Pack. RAT stands Retired at 20. That's what it stands for. So these kids are going for it. They don't want to be an employee for life. So I'm standing, and the crowd is going, and the old guy running the shop, he's not old, he's younger than I am, but he looks at him, he comes walking up, and he shakes his finger and says, you kids better shape up or you won't get a job. You better shape up. I'd never hire you, stuff like this. I'm going, holy mackerel, I'd hate to be you. I'd rather be these kids than these guys. So for all of you listening right now, going to work, 9 to 5, going home, trying to pay bills, hoping that the next president will save your butt. This is your program. So today our special guest is Dr. Barry Schwartz. He's very, very famous. He's one of the leading guys on TED Talks. He's a psychologist, author of the Dorwin Cartwright Professor of Social Theory and Social Action at Swarthmore College. Very smart guy. And this is why we have him on the program, because he does what we do at Rich Dad, but from a different perspective. He studied the link between economics and psychology. And the reason and he's also the author of Practical Wisdom, The Right Way to Do the Right Thing. So, so many people know the economy is in trouble. Many people know they will not ever be able to afford to retire, yet they do the same thing. So for all of you right now, or the worst part of it is that there is something you'd rather do than be at work today or tomorrow, and what would that be? Why don't you go for it? So that's why we have Dr. Barry Schwartz on, a very special guest, and we'll be talking to him about why people do things that may not really, fulfill their lives. So welcome to the program, Dr. Barry Schwartz.
Thanks. It's great to be with you.
So let's start. How did you get onto this subject of the link between economics and psychology?
Well, that's a long story. I've been interested basically for my whole career in questions of what motivates people. And when I was first a student back in the late 60s and early 70s, there was a kind of assumption that dominated psychology that if you want to understand behavior, you just have to look at the rewards and punishments, which were principally material things. Rats will press levers for food, and they'll do it more and more the more food they get. And if you give them a shock or punishment, they'll stop. And that's a model of everything that human beings do. It's all about rewards and punishment. Now, I thought this was wrong, that it didn't describe the people I knew, it didn't describe me, and I have spent most of my career basically trying to, and I think this is this attitude is very much the attitude that economists take, that, you want people to do something, you just have to create the right incentives. Nothing else matters.
So a lot of people, is that paycheck and benefits and the 401k or whatever, something like that.
That's right. It's all about pay and benefits. And you see increasingly when, professional employees, like, say, teachers, unions negotiate contracts, The teachers really care about the working conditions and the educational opportunities that the kids have, but when they sit down at the bargaining table, it's all about wages and benefits.
Right.
So let me ask you this. Why would you find people stay at jobs that are dead ends? Why do they stay there?
You're more of an expert on this than I am.
We're in trouble then. I thought you were the expert.
No, not on this question. I think the reason people stay in jobs that they regard as dead ends is that they feel trapped. They don't know what the alternative is.
They don't know there's options.
They don't think they have the wherewithal to pursue the alternative. It's too risky. You know, it's one thing when, as you were introducing, you're 20 years old with pink hair and nobody depends on you except you. It's another thing when you got a family and a mortgage and kids whose gigantic college tuition bills are looming, and then you kind of feel trapped, and you make the best of a bad situation as long as the compensation's adequate.
Well, let me ask this: have you heard this, that a lot of these younger kids, they don't want to be like their parents, and that's why they're kind of looking now. They see the trap the parents went into?
I do, but that seems to be true of every generation. The question is whether, when they get to be their parents' age, they still don't want to be like their parents. And I have some optimism. I wrote this book called Why We Work, and the point of the book was to acknowledge that people work. Most people wouldn't work if they didn't get paid, but that's not the end of the story. People want work that challenges them, that enables them to grow. They want work that is varied, where they have some autonomy in what they do, and they want work that they think is meaningful, that actually makes a difference to somebody in somebody's life. And what's happened is that the workplace, starting with Adam Smith and evolving ever since, has had this attitude that is just about the paycheck.
Yes. Yeah, Adam Smith, for those who don't know, is an economist. He's a Scottish economist.
He invented economics, pretty much, as we now know it.
And didn't he say that people only work for money, so you have to incentivize them, and that's how they're going to work, because otherwise they're too lazy and they're not going to work?
That's right. That was what he said. And he said a lot of things. He was a very smart and thoughtful guy.
Great man.
And I think a lot of what he said was really insightful. But this particular thing, which is people work for money. They would basically like to sit on a couch eating Fritos and watching football.
Me too.
Or whatever one did in 1776. I think this was a mistake, but it ended up getting built out as the system of division of labor and mass production that became the industrial system all over the world. So if you're going to a job like that where you're doing the same mindless thing, hour after hour, day after day, week after week, why would you do that except for a paycheck?
So
basically close off all other opportunities for people to get some satisfaction out of the work they do.
So are you saying, Dr. Berry, that incentivizing workers does not work, or it works to a certain point?
Well, look, if the work that you're asking people to do is dreadful,
yes,
then they certainly won't do it unless you make it worth their while.
That's a paycheck, generally.
Which is a paycheck. But you don't have to make the work people do dreadful. And they still won't do it unless they're getting paid. But they're not doing it for the pay. They're doing it for the benefits that come from, doing interesting work and doing it well. And there's been a lot of research that compares across different industries, different ways of organizing companies. And the consistent finding is that the most profitable companies are the ones where people are eager to go to work rather than contemplating suicide every time Monday morning rolls around.
Once again, for those who are contemplating suicide, our guest today is Dr. Barry Schwartz. He's a professor at Swarthmore College. He studies the links between economics and psychology. And he asked many of the same questions, Kim and I have been asking. Same thing we pose to our own people that work with our company, is that why are you here? We want to make sure that they feel that when they work at Rich Dad, it's more than a job, it's a calling. We're doing important social benefits to the world, but also that they get what they want. One thing is to say, I'm going to work for everybody else, but you got to get your compensation too. And it's not always a paycheck. And if you saw some of the pay here at Rich Dad, they're definitely not working just for the paycheck.
They're definitely working for a lot of the education they're getting. And we do encourage everybody to start their own business and to invest. And so they're learning that, and they're doing that. We have a lot of our employees have part-time businesses now. But I want to ask you, Dr. Berry, you said it's important that you figure out ways that people come to work energized and excited to show up for work. How do you do that? What would you say to somebody who's got a business and they want to motivate their employees?
Well, I think the critical thing is to trust your employees, give them discretion, emphasize to them the positive effect that their work has, not just on the organization, but on your customers and clients. Don't look over their shoulders all the time. And listen to them. Give them, respect them enough to think they know something about the job and they maybe have something to tell you. And, there are lots of workplaces that are kind of like that.
Well, that's definitely what we find here is when we do brainstorming sessions with our team, they come up with much better ideas than we do.
And this is quite a consistent finding. People who are actually on the line or on the ground are full of ideas. Yeah. It's just that their supervisors are not interested in listening to them.
Well, they call stupid advisors a lot of the times,
well,
stuff like that.
Yeah. But none of this is inevitable. But I'm afraid that people have sort of gotten resigned to it because everywhere they look, that seems to be the way work is organized. And I do think that there are two hopeful prospects for the future. One of them is that women care more about meaning and purpose than men do. And as more and more women enter the workforce, I'm suspecting they simply won't stand for working conditions that men have tolerated. And the second is that millennials, the people with pink hair, definitely do not want to be trapped into a job that's pointless.
What happens if a friend or a family member who's stuck in a job working 9 to 5, not making enough money, and if they're a baby boomer, they know they're probably not going to have enough money to retire on. At the same time, people are hoping the next president will save them in this looming horrific economy. Because our special guest today is Dr. Barry Schwartz. He's a psychologist, and he is the author of his latest book, Why We Work, and is part of the TED Books. And he's you should see him on TED. He's fantastic.
He actually has a great TED Talk called The Way We Think About Work is Broken. Right. It's really great. Go listen to that.
So we're going to go into, especially for those who feel you're trapped or know you need to know something different, because I never understood why people stayed stuck. Dr. Schwartz said, well, they have mortgages and all that, but that's in my opinion, that's not a good reason to stay stuck. My poor dad was a PhD in education. And he always says, well, I would do something different. I didn't have you kids. What a way to talk to your kids. Hey, Dad, don't blame me.
No, that's true.
I'd love to pick up where we left off about you said that there was the two pieces of women and millennials are looking for more meaning in work, Dr. Berry. So can you just touch on that a little bit more?
Well, these people, more than your typical employee, they want to feel at the end of a workday that they have accomplished something more than putting a few bucks in their bank account. They want to do work that makes somebody's life better. And it doesn't have to be, a neurosurgeon who's saving a life. It doesn't have to be grandiose. You can make somebody's life better if you're working in a call center and they call up with a computer problem that's making it impossible for them to get their work done, and you solve the problem.
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you what, the guys that clean my lawn, I love them dearly because then I don't have to do it.
Well, they create their whole meaning is to create a lovely environment, and they do that at every house they go to.
But
these guys are fantastic.
To what extent is this emphasized in the workplace?
Yeah.
And my sense is that mostly it is not emphasized. The supervisor of the people who work on your garden basically want them to do it fast. Because they want to see as many clients a day as they can. The call center supervisors want the calls to end fast so that they can take as many calls in a day as they possibly can. So there's very little emphasis placed on what the work people do is meaningful.
So your hope for the future is that women and millennials will influence the workplace probably more than anything else right now.
That's my hope. That's my hope, is that when you're trying to hire these talented people, if you do business as usual, they won't work for you.
Interesting.
So you're going to have to think of a new way to do your business.
It's interesting that you say that, because my niece, she's 29 years old, and she and her husband have started this business. And once a month they have a party, and at this party they have a topic. And the last month's topic was, what are you going to do to make a difference in the world? And that's where their mindset is. That's where they're thinking. So exactly what you're saying, these millennials are about meaning and purpose.
And, some large companies have kind of moved in the halfway in that direction, in that they give employees permission to use some of their compensated time to work on side projects that are, improve the world in some way. Like one day a week you work in a homeless shelter or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I'm paying your salary so that you can do good works. And that's not a bad thing, don't get me wrong, but it leaves untouched what the company actually does. And the trick is for companies not simply to give their employees permission to do good work, but to make it so that the work they do for the company is good work.
Well, the good thing about it is not just talk. Everybody talks to stuff, but they're actually encouraging them to do it. That's the fantastic part.
Also, there's an example in my book of a carpet tile manufacturer who was very successful, made a lot of money. He was in his 60s, and he had an epiphany one day that this production process that was making him rich was also poisoning the earth. It was a very highly polluting production process. So he made a commitment from that day forward. They were going to move to zero environmental footprint. So he knew that this was going to cost the company money because it involved revamping the whole production process. He didn't care. So they embark on this transformation of production. And astonishingly, instead of costing the company money, profits went up. And the reason that profits went up is that the workforce became, instead of a workforce that's making carpet, became a workforce that's saving the earth. And this so motivated them that they worked more effectively and harder than ever. And they were full of ideas about how to modify the production process to be more environmentally friendly. So he didn't anticipate this going in. And that's the kind of transformation I think we need.
So that's why, there's an old adage that you have a job, you have a career, or you have a calling. And calling,
I actually did the original research that distinction has been based on.
Okay, so that's
perfect.
That's called spiritual.
As part of a group.
Right, the calling is spiritual.
Well, the word calling derives from, and originally it was used to describe people who were called to God.
Right.
But you can generalize it. People who are called to save the planet, people who are called to treat desperately ill children. The point is that they feel a mission to do this work for the social good that it produces. And, if they're also making a living, that's good too. But that's not why they do it.
Right.
And if you gave them incentives to do something else, they wouldn't switch.
And Dr. Barry, how much of this meaning is up? It's up to the individual as well.
Well, that's the thing. To some degree, you work at the call center, and you can tell yourself that you're making people's lives better every time you satisfy whatever problem they have.
Yes, I was walking through the airport the other day, and here's this woman, and she's selling airline credit cards. And this woman was so full of life and happy, and she was making everybody who walked by her happy and smile. And she's like, this is my purpose in life, is just to bring smile to people's faces. And that's what she was doing, selling credit cards.
People like that, but I also think that not all work situations are created equal. There are some work situations where you sort of need to be superhuman to manage to generate and sustain that kind of an attitude. And there are other work situations where it's kind of easy.
Once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki. Our guest today is Dr. Barry Schwartz. He's a psychologist. He studies a link between economics and psychology. And we're speaking today to those of you who are working 9 to 5. And you're working 9 to 5 when you don't want to be there. You're working 9 to 5 when you're thinking about something else, like going camping or watching your kids' football games. Or, the question is, why do you work 9 to 5 then if you'd rather do something else? And that's one of the reasons the Rich Dad Company was formed a long time ago, is that our mission and I learned mission at the military schools. What is our mission, Kim?
To elevate the financial well-being of humanity. And that's been our mission since 1996.
Yeah, and, Dr. Schwartz, I've not been too popular because, my father was the head of education. And I kept asking him, I said, why don't you teach us about money at school? And he could never give me an answer. So that became my mission as a young kid. I said, okay, I'm going to find out why they don't teach us about money at school. And what I found out is exactly what you're finding out, is that it's to keep people at the grindstone, what's that, nose to the wheel or head to the wheel or whatever it is, and working and not thinking about anything but that paycheck. So anyway, that's what the program is about, especially for those of you who are working what I call a toxic environment. We had Dr. Radha Gopalan on our thing about healthcare. If you're working in a place that doesn't make you happy or is toxic, that's as bad as polluting the earth. You have a bad work environment, you're killing yourself and everybody else around you. So listen up, all of you who are working 9 to 5. So Dr. Schwartz, what do you say about education? You're at Swarthmore College, very, very prestigious school. And how come they don't have financial education?
It's a good question. I think in Swarthmore's case, it's because it's regarded as too practical and thus beneath them.
Aha! Amen. Amen.
That's
amen.
the most honest answer I've ever heard.
Amen. Amen.
I have a colleague who taught. He's now unfortunately deceased, but he taught for years in the economics department, and he taught a course in what he called personal finance. And it was basically an attempt to teach college kids how to manage their lives after they graduated.
Yeah.
And, these are all kids with like 800 IQs. You couldn't get them any smarter than this. And they didn't know thing one.
That was my poor dad, PhD. PhD stands for...
And so he taught them. He taught them about bank accounts. He taught them about investments. He taught them about 401ks. And he taught them about the miracle of compounding and blah, 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 blah.
Did he teach him about the Fed? Did he teach him about the Fed and why bailouts are part of the game? You know what I mean?
I don't think he taught them that in that class.
I know, but that's what that's where Rich Dad
class.
is. And the reason, what I found out is the reason there's no financial education in school is a man named, Rockefeller and his buddies. They commandeered the General Education Board in 1903, and they took over what schools have taught because the purpose of education was to take farm kids and turn them into employees for factories. Yep. And they're never to teach them to be rich. That's my complaint.
And that hasn't changed, except now you don't want to turn them into factory workers. Now you want to turn them into coders.
Right.
I like that.
And let me ask you this, too, because we talk about meaning, and a lot of kids come out of school and they go, I don't even know what I want. I don't even know what's meaningful to me. How responsible is the school system for kind of knocking that spirit out of the kid by having them sit and listen and do what you're told, and kind of takes away that creative spirit within a person?
There's no question that some schools do this. I don't get to see the product, the failures very much. Swarthmore is, yes, it's prestigious. It's also extremely selective. So the kids who come to Swarthmore are kids who either managed to be in good schools or somehow survived life in bad ones.
Yeah. I call that academic. I call that discrimination personally. You know what I mean?
Huh?
I call that discrimination. So that's I went to college. I went to a very good school, but I always thought it was kind of a cruel system. The American school system is based upon money. If you live in a poor neighborhood,
no question
you
about
have a poor
that.
education.
And,
you have a poor education if you're poor.
Happily, this is starting to get real attention. And the fact is that the prestigious schools make the problem worse. The
affirmative action.
It's affirmative action for wealthy people. The income distribution of families whose kids go to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Swarthmore is much worse than the income distribution in the country as a whole.
So once again, this is Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. We're talking to Dr. Barry Schwartz. He's famous on TED Talks. Please go see him. His latest book is Why We Work. Our guest today is Dr. Barry Schwartz. He's a psychologist. His latest book is Why We Work, which is, I wonder that myself a lot of times. And he's a professor at Swarthmore College. He studies a link between economics and psychology. And once again, his latest book is Why We Work. But most important, if you want to get to know him, please watch him on TED Talk. Any comments, Kim?
Well, the TED Talk I want to recommend is The Way We Think About Work is Broken. And I would like to ask you, Dr. Barry, why do you think people go to work at jobs they don't enjoy?
Well, I think often people don't know they don't enjoy them until they're in them, and then the question is, why don't they leave?
Yeah.
And there's research on decision-making that actually I think might illuminate this. It's a risk to change jobs. No job is bad in every way so that some other job is going to be better in every way. So by switching jobs, you will gain some things and you will probably lose other things. And we know about people that losses hurt more than gains help.
Yes.
It feels much worse to lose $10 than it feels good to gain $10.
That's a reward and punishment factor of people.
That's right. So, sometimes it's called the negativity bias. So when you're contemplating a switch, what looms large is what you're going to give up by making the switch, and what's not as large is what you're going to gain by making the switch. And it leads to to a kind of inertia or status quo bias. It's better to keep what I've got than to take a risk on something new.
Right.
And
also what happens
that
is
makes perfect sense.
You lose a thing called seniority, even if there's no seniority. If you go to another company, you often start at the bottom again,
Yeah, well, I mean, there may also be practical effects, but all that means is that almost always changing jobs means making a trade-off.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're saying,
and when you have to make a trade-off, what you're giving up is much more powerful than what you're gaining, and the result is that people are reluctant to make.
What would you say to somebody who knows they should make that switch, but they're afraid of the punishment? The punishment is worse than the reward. Well,
Yeah.
how do you talk to them as a psychologist to get their brain functioning?
Well, I mean, I think there are a couple of things. This is very powerful, this negativity bias. I think if they focus on what it is that's really positive about the new opportunity, they can try to overcome this negativity bias. But it won't be easy. And the other thing they can do is ask themselves whether there's anything I can do about my current work situation to make it better. And sometimes the answer to that is yes, simply by changing your approach to the work that you're doing. If you're not being so carefully scrutinized and monitored by supervisors, you can turn what seems to be kind of dull work into work that's meaningful by focusing on the ways in which it makes a difference in other people's lives. And then you might not feel any longer like it's a ball and chain.
So how could a person working with a ball and chain around their ankles, which is a job, turn a job into a calling, but still have the ball and chain? But still have the ball and chain, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'll give you an example. A colleague of mine who teaches at Penn named Adam Grant did this study. Universities hire college students to call alums to make contributions. And this is not a pleasant job because almost everybody says no. Having just written, $200,000 worth of checks, the last thing they want to do is write another one. But nonetheless, they get paid. The kids get paid by the hour, and they show up for 2 hours a couple of times a week and call these alums to get them to make contributions to scholarship funds and various other things. So one day, Adam Grant had a recent graduate come in who had gone to the school thanks to a scholarship that was available thanks to these solicitations. So this is a working class kid whose life was changed by the opportunity to go to this school. And he gave a 5-minute speech about how life-changing this was and how much he appreciated the efforts of people who made the scholarship possible. That was it. And then they went back to calling their alums to try to get them to write checks. And alumni contributions almost tripled. So this was a simple effort to make sure that the people doing the work were connected to the effect that work had on the lives of other people.
That's very important. Very, very important.
Here's a case where, the supervisor did it, but you could also ask yourself that question.
Right.
Yeah.
How is what I'm doing changing somebody's life? Somebody comes into your men's clothing store to buy something, and you can ask yourself, what can I do to make this person's day better? I know I can sell him what he needs and not try to upsell him. I can maybe even talk him out of buying something that he's really keen on because I know he's not going to be happy with it. I can make this person's day. Now, that's very different from how can I make a sale for as much money as possible as fast as possible.
Right.
Very well said.
Yes,
very well said.
Because this goes back to putting the responsibility on the individual to say, hey, what in your life can you have, can meaning happen? Yeah.
Exactly right. But there are limits to what you can do. In really toxic workplaces, you can't do this.
So if it's a really toxic workplace, is
Then
your
you gotta
recommendation to get out? Yeah.
Then you got to get out.
Yeah.
And that's what this our doctor, he wrote the book called Second Opinion, comes out this in November. And he's a cardiologist as well as an acupuncturist, and he says the thing that kills you is your work environment if it's toxic.
And if you're in conflict with it, so doing
there's
stuff
no
that's
question about it. It doesn't kill you fast; it kills you slow.
Yeah.
Well, that's good news. You have any further words of wisdom for people who are 9 to 5? I mean, that's very powerful stuff, saying you've got to change your point of view on your work, is what you're saying.
Well, I think that's one step. Sometimes you have to change your work. I don't want to put all of the responsibility.
We're not recommending that,
No, it goes back to what you were talking about, people who really want to make a change, but they're afraid to make the change because the fear of loss is greater than the reward of...
Yeah, but now there's another thing, which is if you're a 40-ish-year-old person doing a job that you don't much love, what can you do so that your kids have different aspirations than you do?
What could you do?
Well, there hasn't been much research on where this calling attitude comes from, surprisingly enough. We know that there are real differences between people, but we don't know how they get there. And there's a little bit of evidence that the single biggest influence on the attitude young people have toward work is the attitude their parents have toward work.
That's amen, amen.
But it's not the attitude their parents tell them to have toward work. It's the attitude their parents actually have toward their own work.
Amen, amen, amen. For example...
So you're doing a favor not only to your customers, you're doing a favor to your children.
Well,
you can find a way to get to see what you do as more meaningful.
Right. So, Dr. Schwartz, my dad was head of education, PhD and all this stuff. And in the 60s, John Kennedy came to office and he created the Peace Corps. And my mom and dad quit their jobs. Mother was a registered nurse, and Mom and Dad went to work for the Peace Corps. It was the biggest financial hit our family ever took. But I remember it was the happiest our family ever was. So for 2 years, probably during my formative years, 14 to 16, we had no money again. But our parents, my parents, our family, the kids were the happiest. And Kim's dad worked with...
My dad, one of the key things I remember my dad when I was young living in New Jersey is Martin Luther King came to town and there was a big march. And my dad, being a white man, marched with Martin Luther King because that was very, very important to him. And that was that showed the meaning and the purpose to me as a young girl.
And our parents...
And this is the key age, early adolescence is the key age.
Right.
So it may well be that the single best thing your parents did for you, never mind for them, was taking was going into the Peace Corps.
Yeah. And they didn't talk about it, they just did it, if you know what I mean.
That's the point. Talking about it is a waste of breath.
Yeah. They didn't say you should do this and all that.
Kids see right through their parents.
Right. So all of you out there listening at 9 to 5, the question is, what message are you sending to your kids if you have kids? So once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki. We're talking to Dr. Barry Schwartz. His most recent book is Why We Work, and he's on TED Talks all the time. Very, very famous, popular guy. So please go and listen to his talks, watch his video on TED Talks. And he studies a link between economics and psychology, and we could talk about a lot of subjects with him. But today, it's really written for those of you who may be stuck at 9 to 5 and wondering why you're going to work. So, Kim, any further questions for Dr. Schwartz?
Well, I really appreciate this, Dr. Schwartz. It's been fascinating. And for me, I think one of the biggest takeaways is understanding what you can do today if you're in a position where you don't feel you have much meaning, is to look at your job, look at your position, and find within you, where can I create meaning? Where can I make somebody's life better? What can I do today instead of being at the effect of your boss and your work?
Yep.
I just got my teeth cleaned. I've been going to this same hygienist for 10 years. And She's a very nice woman. And every time I sit down, I say thank you. You know, I don't know why you do this work, because I would sure hate to clean my teeth when I tell her how much I appreciate her doing it every day, 9 to 5. You know what I mean? And so we can all.
But even there, you know, there are some people who it's obvious when you look at them that they wish they were anywhere else. And
well, if I was cleaning teeth, I'd be someplace else, I'll tell you, you know.
But there are other people who totally get into it. You know, every interaction is, first of all, a chance to learn something from a patient. And second of all, try to teach them to do personal hygiene better.
But that's a great point, because I want to work with people who love what they do. I want to work with people who enjoy their work.
My point here, you guys, is this. Why don't we say thank you to people doing unpleasant work?
Oh, I think that you're absolutely right. And often these people are the invisible ones.
Yes. She's just a hygienist working for this high-paid dentist.
Yep.
For 10 years. I've been going there. She opens my dirty mouth and cleans it. I'm going, holy moly, I would hate this job. And we're now going to the most popular part of our program, which is Ask Robert. And you can send your questions to richdadradio.com, Ask Robert. And once again, thank you to Dr. Barry Schwartz. He's a psychologist. He's a professor at Swarthmore College, very prestigious school. His studies are the link between economics and psychologists. In other words, why are you staying at a job you don't like, not getting paid enough?
And his latest book is called Why We Work, and he's got a lot of TED Talks, and one of the ones most linked to this program is The Way We Think About Work is Broken. So recommend those.
And I think the most important thing is, you know, what are you doing rather than talking? And then
demonstrating.
If you're going to talk to somebody, just say thank you. Many people do really crappy jobs, like my hygienist. I don't know how she does it. And if I had that job, I'd quit a long time ago. But I thanked her today, you know, because without her, I'd have crappy teeth. So, Melissa, what's the first question for Ask Robert?
Our first question today comes from Ralph in the Philippines. Favorite book, Cashflow Quadrant. He says, I'm a network marketer and currency investor for the past 8 months. My team and I are growing slowly through the grind, as expected. But what can I do to keep them from giving up so easily?
Well, if they're quitters, you should get rid of them anyway. You know what I mean? That's the whole thing. Yet, we talked about it briefly on this program as a sense of mission. You know, like when I went to military school, the Marine Corps and the Marine Corps, it was the mission. What is your mission in life? And I would sit together with your team and find out what is their mission in life. If it's just to make money, get rid of them, because then you'll be like some of my old partners and all that. All they wanted to do was come to Rich Dad and make money, and they didn't care who they screwed doing it. So I want you to remember something, you know, all through history, in the Bible and all that, there's always people like Judas and, you know, et tu, Brute. They're people that will screw you. So it's human nature. So when you're sitting with your team, you better make sure they have a sense of mission, which is spiritual. The Marine Corps was a very spiritual organization, contrary to what most people think. You know, it was that mission that held us together through some of the most horrible things we had to do. I mean, horrible. And I came back to the States. I meet these corporate guys. They have no sense of mission. All they want to do is make money. I should have shot them instead of the Viet Cong. Any comments, Kim?
Well, I would say two things to Ralph. One is his wording is interesting. He says we're working through the grind, which is to be expected. And yeah, building a business is tough, and there's a lot of obstacles that you face. But if that's your mindset is we're working through the grind, that's like going to work 9 to 5. To me, that's what it sounds like. So you might want to look at why you, Ralph, are even doing this business. And one thing I love about the network marketing industry is there's so many different products, businesses out there
and teams,
to choose from, that you can choose a team or choose a business that's aligned to you, that has that meaning and has that purpose and has that mission that's aligned to you. So I think this is all about meaning and purpose and mission.
So when you look at our team, our advisors like Kenny McElroy, Tom Wheelwright, Blair Singer, we are in different industries. We're entrepreneurs in different companies, but we share the same mission. Our mission is to elevate the financial well-being of humanity. So when Blair comes in and he talks, he speaks from the mission that he's going to teach people to sell. Because if you can't sell, as you know in network marketing, 99% of them can't sell. So they should then say, well, my mission is to serve humanity, but I got to learn to sell first. And the other reason most network marketers don't succeed is they don't have a long-term goal. In other words, the only reason you join network marketing is to buy real estate. You know, my mission is to acquire 1,000 pieces of property. Through that, my mission then is to make myself richer, but I've got to keep going through that to get to my goal. Most people quit, especially the techies of this world. They call them tech slobs or something. They want instant gratification. They just want to, well, give me the easy answer. And there is no easy answer. So you hang out with a person who wants the easy answer, who's going to quit when the going gets tough and violate their sense of mission, then you've had it. So every one of our advisors, twice a year, we get together for 3 days. We have book studies. And so many people say, I'm into education, but they don't show up for the book study. They're gone. This is exactly what I was saying about my dad. He didn't talk about purpose. He didn't talk about the Peace Corps. He joined the Peace Corps. Kim's dad didn't talk about Martin Luther King. He joined Martin Luther King. And it's that spiritual sense of mission that is lacking in most people's lives because all they want is money. So put your team together, put a study together, group together, read books, discuss it and all this. And those who stay with you share your mission. Those that drop off, good riddance. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Eric, also from the Philippines. Favorite book, Cashflow Quadrant. He says, where do you find new friends and acquaintances with similar interests on stocks, real estate, and investing? I find the more financially educated I become, the further I drift from my previous interests and friends. When talking with my old friends, they're still stuck on the same old thing, and many get nervous, anxious, or uncomfortable when I start talking about my new interests, such as the stock market and real estate. While I have no intention of abandoning my old friends, it would surely be more positive spending time with people of similar interests to discuss what I'm learning in the markets, etc. Do you have any advice for me?
Yeah, you learn something else. Your friends are scum. You should get rid of them. Next question. No, I'm very serious. If you want to change your friends, take classes. I go to classes all the time. Education is it. You got to find people who are interested in what you're interested in. So I go to real estate investment courses, I go to stock courses, I go to entrepreneurs courses, and there I meet the people who are interested in the same subject. But you hang out with your same loser friends, you can love them to death, but don't hang out with them.
And I think Eric is going through what we all have gone through. I mean, I've said goodbye to a lot of friends, and he said, interesting, he said, I don't want to abandon my friends. Well, you don't have to abandon your friends, but the question is, where are you going to spend your time? Who are you going to spend your time with? And I think it's interesting as he talks about his new interests and investing and all of this, his friends get nervous because, in my opinion, his friends see him moving forward and they see themselves not moving forward. So I think that's all natural what he's experiencing.
And there's nothing right or wrong with it. We all have different interests. I'll be in the Philippines in a little while and I'm talking to you. The people that come are people that are interested in what I have to say. That's where you meet the same kind of friends. So I go to seminars constantly because I meet new people. But if I hadn't done that, I'd still be hanging out with my classmates in Hawaii who are all marijuana dealers. I love them, but I don't want to be a marijuana dealer. To me, that's against the law. To them, they're doing business.
So Eric should go to your talk in November in the Philippines, and then he's going to see a lot of like-minded people. That's one place he can find them.
Well, it's just an idea.
Just an idea.
He may not hear this program. But the point here is this. You don't have to hang out with friends. You move on. Like I would never hang out with people who are criminals. Yet I was in business with many of them. The moment I found out they were criminals, I moved on. I don't want to hang out with. I still like them. They're some are criminals. They're still criminals. They're still cheating people. I have a friend who cheats on his wife. I don't do that. So I just don't hang out with them as much. You know what I mean? It's up to them. I'm not here to play Jesus or God or Buddha or Muhammad. People are going to do what they want to do, but it's not only just money and finance, it's your core values you hang out with. So I hang out with people who have a mission. I don't hang out with people who just want to make money. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Nick in Calgary. Favorite book, Cashflow Quadrant. He says, would you say giving your kid a credit card and teaching them how to use it is a good way to teach kids how to use and manage debt?
Well, that's a pretty lightweight question. You know what I mean? What you're talking to them is about controlling their emotions and it's a discipline, which is important. It's good. It's a good start.
Yeah, but I think
I don't get too excited about it.
I think one of the bigger lessons, though, Nick can teach through the credit card is the difference between good debt and bad debt. Because most kids who are using a credit card, they're using bad debt. So it can't hurt. It's certainly more than most parents are doing, actually, teaching their kids about money. So I think it's a great thing.
I'd have them sign an agreement that they can use a credit card and not pay on it, and then they can suffer the consequences. As Barry Schwartz says, there's rewards and punishment. I've not paid my credit card bills. and I got punished severely.
When we had nothing, we were struggling.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, before Kim, I had, American Express had me on their most wanted list for a while, and they punished me. And thank God American Express punished me, because then I understood they were serious about me paying the thing. So I don't really think it's good or bad, and I'm just happy, stuff like that. If your kid misuses the credit card early in life, that could be a good thing, unless they don't see it as a good thing. So
and the fact that he wants to teach them, that's a good thing, because how many, we've heard this time and time again, college kids have their student loan or they're using credit cards. They don't think they have to pay it back. They don't even think it's free money. So the earlier you can teach them, the better. So next question, Melissa.
At least you're thinking.
Yes.
Our next question comes from Martin in Rockville, Maryland. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It says, what are some assets a beginning investor can start putting his money into?
How about that asset is called the 6-inch void between your ears? The most valuable asset you have is your brain. And if you don't know what you should invest in, you should go find out and fill it up, The thing that I think is really tragic, in which, I was talking to Barry Schwartz about this, our schools they teach you to put it in mutual funds and ETFs. You know how stupid that is? I don't think anybody has an idea how stupid they are. To invest for the long term in a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, and mutual funds and save money, somebody put that information between your ears. You better flush that stuff out. Just flush the toilet, get rid of that, and go look for new information. Because the problem, if you've listened to the Rich Dad Show, the trouble with ETFs, when this market crashes, and it will, ETFs will fall 9 to 10% farther than stocks. And what most people, since they have no financial education, is, what should I invest in? Should I save money? I mean, God almighty, get a brain. You need a brain. That's your biggest asset.
I can't agree with you more, because if Martin is going to listen to you and you say, buy this asset, how in the world would you know what asset he should buy? It's up to him to start getting his homework. So I totally agree, Robert.
So that's why I listen to the Rich Dad radio program, where Rich Dad's coaching, Rich Dad education. There's thousands and millions of books written on this subject. So your job is to fill out the most important asset, which is your brain. It's your job, not my job. So once again, thank you for all your questions. I bark sometimes, but they're important to bark at people. You can submit your questions to AskRobert at richdadradio.com. And I thank all of you who listen to this program.